I'm Jonathan. I'm here from Michigan, and I'm going to talk to you today about the importance of shooting for the impossible. Okay, a couple of key things. I'm going to refer to some student experiences here, so I have changed their identities to protect the innocent. Okay? But these are true stories. So let me tell you about Carl. Carl's one of my students. And Carl, I think, is like many of our students. Carl has a really big goal. A goal that maybe he hasn't felt comfortable talking to a lot of people about. Why would that be? What's one issue with Carl's goal?
It's impossible.
It's impossible, right? And Carl is a great student. He's talented, he's driven, he's pretty fearless, and he's a pretty good, hunter as well. So he's getting pretty close to the red dot, right? But there's something about his thinking that has made it impossible, right? Now, what I think is that that's not Carl's mistake. I think it's our mistake. Because we believe that too. And as mentors, whether we're private teachers or we're career development specialists or whatever our role is, when we work with students, I think quite often, even in our best efforts to help them think about all these different possibilities and the transferability of their skills, sometimes we inadvertently reinforce their insecurity about achieving these goals. We help them believe that these are impossible. So Carl, by the time he finishes his degree, quite often ends up with sort of two different mindsets. One, that we probably all seen is, maybe I'm never going to do it, right? That red dot, I should have just been playing with string all this time. Guys, why was I even doing this, right? In other cases, and I see this particularly in the job search, there are students who, as a way of protecting against the insecurity that they have about trying to achieve this impossible goal, whatever that is, you just think about the types of big goals, whether it's being the concertmaster of the New York Phil, or being a world-class soloist, or being part of a world-famous chamber music group, whatever it is. We sometimes see resumes and other documents where people have inflated what they have achieved, right? Because they feel like it's going to help them become more competitive. I believe that actually one of the things we must do, and we have the power to do, is to help our students realize impossible dreams. But we have to help them think differently, to think like innovators. And this is a shout out to David Cutler, who I had to talk about this to before the conference. Great quote, right? Innovators ask different questions. Now, what are impossibilities? We're going to get to that. I love this quote. I also love Christopher Reeve because he's the only Superman worth watching, in my opinion. And he's a very inspirational figure to most people who know of him, right? And he has this quote that so many of our dreams first seem impossible, then they become improbable, and it's only with enough will, when we summon the will, that they will become inevitable. And I think this is how we should be thinking about our students' goals, whatever they are. Those, especially that seem impossible, it's our job, and what we're going to do today is take them from being impossible to improbable and inevitable. But first I want to talk about impossibilities, because we need to break that down. There are three classes of impossibilities in theoretical physics. Class 1 impossibilities do not violate our laws of physics, but are somewhat off in the distant future in terms of when they'll be a reality. 100 years off, 500 years off. Transporter from Star Trek is one of those. Class 2 impossibilities are things that are on the edge of our understanding, but they don't necessarily break the laws of physics. Time travel is one of those things. Class 3 impossibilities are things that, if they were true, would fundamentally alter our understanding of the natural world. Precognition, seeing the future, reading your mind. Or the probability that we're going to have a Ghostbusters 3 now that they're doing the remake, right? Never going to happen, right? Class 3 impossibility. In the light of this, we could probably say that our students' goals to achieve one of those big goals, it's not only probable, it's likely, right? Someone is going to achieve those things. Why not our students? So part of this process is helping our students look at an impossibility and say, why not? And then help them think differently about what it means to achieve. As an innovator, innovation is also about timing, right? All of these items, except for maybe the driverless car, don't seem like innovations to us. But at certain points in history, they were all impossibilities, right? In some cases, like the microwave oven was discovered by an accident, and it took 20 years from the first discovery of that technology to when Amana released a commercial product microwave for the home, right? Domestic driverless car, the idea of a driverless car was introduced in 1939. And now in 2016, it's right on the horizon, right? So it's a matter of timing and a matter of understanding what the possibilities could be, not what the impossibilities are. So, we've already gotten to step 2, right, in our thinking. Now, in helping our students in a practical way, I think we can all do this on an individual basis with our students. And here's the general process, the entrepreneurial process that underlies this. I'm only going to talk about the first step because it's 10 minutes. First is help our students identify what those big goals are, because not all of them have a clearly identified one. That's a whole other process. Once you have it, this is the key piece. Reverse your assumptions about what that big goal might be. Once you've done that, you can develop a minimum viable product, which is sort of the version that takes the minimum resources and provides the maximum amount of useful information. Because after you've done that, and I'd say a good example is, what can you do for less than $100 within a month? Most of our students can do something in that time frame with those resources. And then once you have information, you can decide whether it's successful and you want to continue it, you've learned things from it and you want to adjust it, or whether you really want to pivot and go in a totally different direction. So here's an example. Here's a big, hairy, audacious goal. I want to be a new music pianist, right, who performs chamber music concerts, and obviously at a big scale. What are some assumptions we have about that output? Here's 4 ones, if you can't see them clearly. Musicians would perform for audiences in that kind of a concert. Concerts would take place in a venue. Concerts have program notes, and concerts deliver music of some kind. Would we assume those things would happen in a chamber concert? Okay, let's reverse them. Audiences perform for musicians. Concerts have no venue, concerts have no program notes, and concerts do not deliver music of any kind. Or we could say a performance does not deliver music of any kind. Now, if we ask our students to come up with examples of this, did any come to mind to you, by the way? Seems like that's kind of an impossibility. A lot of students, if you were to ask them based on their knowledge, they would say it's impossible. But if we think about it, there are really many examples of these things that have already occurred, right? John Cage's 433 is one of the most famous, right? Pieces where it's all about community experience. And if you've ever performed it, as a performer, you feel like the audience is performing for you, right? For the second, the lack of venue, I mean, there are flash mobs. There's a group called Acropolis Reed Quintet. They do web premieres. They premiere their pieces online, and they have an audience that tunes in for it. Breaking Wind's Bassoon Quartet, one of my favorites. By the way, a big dream that seems impossible, a touring bassoon quartet that has millions of YouTube views and became an online sensation, right? Or for the last one, a concert that produced no music, Vulfpeck Sleepified. If you haven't heard of it, you might have and not known it. It was a band that created an album of silence that they played on Spotify. It was 30 minutes, 10 tracks over 30 seconds. They asked their fans to play it overnight, every night, for a month or something, and they would use all the revenue that came in from the royalties to fund a free tour. They raised $20,000. It takes a lot of plays on Spotify to raise it, right? So when you ask a student to do this and they start to come up, and you can help them guide them towards examples of some of these reversals, all of a sudden an impossible idea seems like it's pretty inevitable, right? Likely, practical, maybe even conventional. And this is the fodder, the foundation upon which we can help them create projects and events that might be in the spirit of some of these. Why is that important? Because reversing assumptions is inherently a part of the process of creativity. Creativity is the cornerstone, it's the foundation, right? It's applied imagination, right? And innovation is really just applied creativity. Ken Robinson has spoken about this, and I'm a big fan. Why is creativity as a fundamental piece of this important? It's not just because I say so. The SNAP survey, which has surveyed over 100,000 professional performing artists at all stages of life, have ranked creativity as the #1. I know it's hard to see. Should have put a highlight. Creativity as the most important element of their practice, regardless of whether they are performing today or not. So I think that says a lot. And if we're going to ask them to tackle these bigger assumptions that we've already been addressing today and we're thinking about, things about issues like how do we manage innovation within tradition? How do we reconcile this idea and kind of usurp the trope that musicians don't make money? How do we adjust our curriculum? Well, it's just like if we ask a student to do that right now without an iterative practice around this kind of work, it's like asking a student who comes in their first lesson the next week to learn a Mozart concerto. We would never do that. We expect them to develop those skills and abilities and vision and interpretive abilities that are required for that over time. So I think we need to do the same thing for our performers. There are many examples of people who have done this and who are models, but the one thing I would say to you is that If we can help students think this way, it's going to change the parameters that they use to evaluate what's possible for themselves and maybe help them come up with different questions and new answers to long-standing problems. So, thank you so much.